Well, welcome everybody. Welcome to this Innovation Forum webinar. We'll be talking about the potential for blue carbon. As I said, we do have a word cloud in operation right now, so please do engage with that as everybody joins the call. So, blue carbon, coastal ecosystems such as mangroves, seagrasses, salt marshes, collectively known as blue carbon, are some of the most efficient natural carbon sinks on the planet, storing carbon up to 10 times faster than terrestrial forests. They also protect coastlines, they support fisheries, and provide critical habitat for biodiversity. Yet these ecosystems are disappearing rapidly, and their protection remains underfunded in most climate strategies. The importance of blue carbon is, however, beginning to gain traction amongst corporate sustainability teams, but it still represents a small share of nature-based investments. There's a clear opportunity to change that. To discuss the possibilities, I'm delighted to be joined by a panel of experts. Yihan Wang from Terraformation, Amy Schmid from Conservation International, Whitney Johston from Salesforce, and Ladama Madiza from Kind World Project. Welcome to you all. And our thanks to the Terraformation team for their support of today's webinar. Okay, I will turn to the panel very shortly, but we do want to hear from all of you. Please be thinking about points and questions that you would like me to put to our experts and write them into the Q&A box in your Zoom window. Please note your name and organisation when putting your question. You can, of course, like others' questions by clicking the thumbs up, and the more likes, the greater the chances that I will put the question to the panel. We are recording the webinar, and we will share the recordings with everybody in due course. Okay, let's go. Yihan, welcome. Can you briefly explain what blue carbon means in the context of your work and why it's a critical element in climate solutions? Yihan.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. Hi, everyone. I'm Yihan, and glad to be here today. Blue carbon ecosystems we're talking about today refers to carbon capture and stored in marine and coastal ecosystems. There are three main types of projects: mangroves, seagrass, and salt marshes. So in the context of Terraformation's work, we restore mangroves in a number of our forestry projects. And blue carbon projects are essential in the fight for climate change because it has the ability to sequester carbon 10 times faster than terrestrial forests per unit area. And most of the carbon captured are stored in the waterlogged soils, which can be remained locked for hundreds to thousands of years. Beyond carbon, the blue carbon ecosystems or mangrove ecosystems protect coastal lines from flooding and soil erosion and supports millions of people's livelihoods. Mangrove ecosystems also provide habitat and feeding grounds and nurseries for more than 1,500 plant and animal species worldwide. So it's a critical biodiversity and community livelihood support tool, as well as a powerful carbon sink. Because these ecosystems are disappearing rapidly and still underfunded, scaling blue carbon restoration is very important to us. And currently, we need to increase funding by 85% compared to current levels to reach the 30 by 30 agreement by 2030. So that's why, it's critical for Terraformation to fill the gap and then provide forestry teams the tools, financing, technology, and resources to scale these kind of projects.
I know you're involved in a number of projects, in particular one in Ghana. Can you talk a bit about that, please?
The Ghana project is one of our first projects in the accelerator program, and it's also the first large-scale blue carbon or mangrove carbon projects in West Ghana, registered under Verra VM37 methodology. The project focused on restoring, in its first phase, 2,300 hectares of mangroves. And the project has a potential to sequester 1 million tons of carbon over the 40-year project lifetime. The project also has a potential to expand to 10,000 hectares. And with that size, it can restore and capture 5 million tons of carbon over 40 years. Beyond carbon, the project also supports livelihoods by developing apiculture, aquaculture, and we provide skills training to local communities to help them learn skills necessary to maintain the long-term success of the project. We also establish a community trust fund that provide continued revenue to support infrastructure, education, healthcare, that the essential services that can be enjoyed by the entire community. The project also is very unique because it's fully community-led. So we built the project around active community participation, equitable benefits sharing, and to ensure the communities are the long-term stewards of the ecosystem and the project. Specifically, 60% of the full-time jobs this project creates are women. And we share about 70% of the total revenue of the project with community, which is unprecedented. Ultimately, we want to use this project as a proof of concept to demonstrate how to develop a blue carbon project in practice. And hopefully this model can be replicated across the globe to scale these kind of projects and impact.
Thank you. So what have been the biggest challenges then that you face at the project, particularly in terms of scale?
Yeah, the biggest challenge is definitely funding, just like all the other ARR projects worldwide. There is a very limited funding, both from public and private sector, flowing into supporting mangrove ecosystem restoration and blue carbon. And we need a lot more work to do to fill the financing gap. So here are some of our suggestions. First of all, I think there are a lot of blended finance vehicles and innovative financing mechanisms that public and private sectors could partner together to do. So there are a lot of concessional capital, for example, provided by family offices, foundations, development banks that can be used to de-risk private investments. The second suggestion is around we need to invest early. There's a huge opportunity for private sectors to lock in carbon credits early before the price continue to increase. And a recent study actually showcased that the price of blue carbon credits reached a record high. So there's an urgency to act now and invest early through long-term offtake agreement to lock in these credits at affordable price. So yeah, these are our suggestions for scaling up financing, which is absolutely critical to save and scale these projects.
Great, thanks very much indeed. So what other lessons then? What are the lessons or the primary lessons learned that can be applied to other blue carbon initiatives, you think?
Yeah, so there are a few lessons. First of all, community leadership is key. We need to build these projects with active community participation and decision making from the get-go, because success depends on long-term support, and these has to come from communities. The second lesson is to build rigorous science around MRV, the measurement, reporting, and verification. And it has to be combined with local knowledge. We use a combination of field data, sampling collection, remote sensing, and GIS mapping, as well as third-party verification in our projects to ensure rigorous measurement and carbon accounting. And we work with local communities closely to ensure local knowledge is built in the design and the long-term management of the project. Another lesson I would like to share is to design projects for co-benefits. The projects that of high quality must deliver biodiversity community benefits beyond carbon sequestration. So for buyers, there are CCB labels under Vera that you can look for. That is the stamp of approval for these co-benefits. And then the next lesson I would say is early catalytic finance matters. So upfront investments is critical to get these projects up to speed, and early financing can cover the high development costs and the early years of the project development, which is critical for private sector investments to come in later. And lastly, policy and the governance need to align. So we embed projects within supportive national and regional frameworks to ensure scalability and durability. And then we need a lot more clarity and standardization around policy and regulations. and the frameworks to help buyers and developers to know what constitutes a high quality project and what makes up a high quality credit.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Loads to come back on there. Amy, let me turn to you briefly. Conservation International has led many blue carbon projects. Can you share some insights on their projects and impacts on climate and communities? And just to show these things are live, I've got to very quickly dash and let somebody in, so I will do that. But Amy, over to you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Schmidt. I'm the Global Blue Carbon Project Lead at Conservation International. And just for a quick introduction, Conservation International is a leader in the blue carbon space. We've developed pioneering science, piloted crediting projects, and enabled policy change to advance blue carbon work around the world. So we developed the first blue carbon crediting project under Verra that fully accounts for soil carbon, and that's our Vida Manglar project in Cispata, Colombia. So this project protects around 7,500 hectares of mangroves along the Caribbean coast in Colombia. And we are expecting that it will result in close to 1 million tons of CO2 equivalent in emission reductions over its 30-year lifetime and provide benefits for around 1,800 people. Additionally, this project is protecting important habitat for certain key species, including manatees, otters, and the needle-nosed crocodile. And so some of the, I guess, community benefits that we are creating through this project are working very closely with the local communities to improve livelihoods and help develop alternative productive practices. So many of the drivers of mangrove loss in this area are from agriculture or expanding cattle or water buffalo pastures, or from people cutting down mangroves for timber within the protected area. And so the project is working very closely with communities to design alternative productive practices, including, community gardens or improved agricultural practices, beekeeping and honey products, and also some ecotourism activities and helping to improve kind of things like birdwatching tours or a crocodile rehabilitation center. And so the project has been running for a number of years now. We completed our first verification under the VCS program in 2020, and we're currently undergoing the second verification now under VCS and CCB to have another kind of set of credits that can be issued and kind of confirm that we're continuing to deliver on climate, community, and biodiversity benefits.
Thank you. What are the key challenges then in measuring and managing blue carbon projects, and perhaps compare that to terrestrial projects?
Yeah, so I think a few key challenges, both that we've seen with our project in Colombia, but also in other projects that we have been kind of scoping or exploring around the world, are one around the scale and location of blue carbon ecosystems. So blue carbon ecosystems tend to be located in relatively small areas along the coast. They need to have the conditions just right in terms of having enough salinity, but not too much to exist, for example. Additionally, these projects tend to be located in more heavily populated coastal zones. So there are more people that could be using resources or using the blue carbon ecosystem that need to be involved in project design. And so having a smaller scale location or project can make it more difficult in crediting projects, especially to have a financially feasible project where you can kind of sustain the activities needed through carbon credits alone. And additionally, having more people to engage with can occasionally kind of slow down the process, but it's also a bigger opportunity of being able to provide benefits to more people by doing these activities. The second challenge I'll highlight is related to complex accounting. So blue carbon ecosystems are really dynamic systems. They're connected to other ecosystems by water, and they're influenced by upstream dynamics, which usually is not the case for terrestrial carbon projects. So in practice, what this means is for restoration projects, you may need to address continuing or ongoing drivers of loss or barriers to restoration. So a lot of times planting alone is not enough to have a successful restoration project. And similarly for conservation projects, you need to understand kind of the full scope of drivers of loss, including potentially offsite drivers of loss like changing sedimentation, water pollution, or other upstream influences or impacts. And the last challenge I'll highlight is related to, I guess, ownership or control of the project area. So just based on where blue carbon ecosystems are located, they're often owned or controlled, at least to some extent, by one or more government entities, which is not always the case for other types of ecosystems which may have private ownership. And this can complicate project development because by necessity, you need to bring in these government agencies to make sure that they are kind of on board with moving forward with projects and that the policies are in place to support them. Additionally, in some cases, it's not fully clear which government agencies might have, the final say or full ownership. And in certain cases, you can also have differing government agencies that have different or competing priorities. For example, in one location where we have worked, one government agency had a priority to protect all mangroves and another had a priority to expand aquaculture production. And those two things cannot really happen at the same time because you will put new aquaculture ponds where the mangroves currently are. So those are just some of kind of the main challenges that we've encountered with blue carbon projects. Of course, none of these are kind of insurmountable, but they do add complexity.
So how did you overcome that that example you mentioned just now with the one agency going one way and another agency going the other way?
So in that case, we were not able to move forward with that particular project for some differing reasons. But I know that in other cases in that country, outside of carbon crediting, other projects have still been able to move forward with restoration efforts, but it is just a risk of like how to ensure in the long term that mangroves that you're restoring today won't be cut down in 5 years for expanded aquaculture production. So it needs to be kind of taken into account in like long-term planning and implementation of the project.
It's a classic example of unintended consequences coming into play. So Amy, beyond carbon credits then, what financial models are helping to sustain these sort of projects long term?
Yeah, so I think carbon credits are one important type of financial mechanism for blue carbon projects, but they're not the only one that's out there, and they also aren't the only one that's needed to get to the scale of action that we need. So some of the other types of financial mechanisms that we have worked with at CI include payment for ecosystem services, which is somewhat similar to carbon crediting, but also very different. And one thing that I am currently excited about is looking into blue carbon positive economic models. And so looking at different types of business models that rely on healthy coastal ecosystems. So for example, textiles from seagrass or sustainable ocean ranching for sea cucumber production that depend on, again, healthy seagrass or something like saltwater agriculture. And so with these models, one, they could kind of fit in with like a value chain or supply chain intervention, but also provide real benefits to the people who are implementing the business models that will rely on these healthy ecosystems.
Okay, thanks very much. Again, lots to come back on there, but thanks very much indeed, Amy. Whitney, welcome. So Salesforce have been involved in helping build blue carbon ecosystem and markets for some time. How do you see early movers shaping this area, Whitney?
Yes. Well, first, thank you so much for having me here and for this wonderful conversation. Salesforce invests in nature and sustainability because healthy business relies on a healthy planet. And we're making our investments through our technology and funding and our partnerships to support ecopreneurs, which are the entrepreneurs working on nature and climate, to protect biodiversity and drive the transition to a nature positive future. So that's our orientation. And some of the things we think first movers and early investors can do in the space is commit to high quality, support the enabling conditions, and then seek out opportunities to collaborate in order to scale impact. So I'll unpack those a little bit. With high quality, there's a lot of guidance available around high quality. And one of the core pieces of guidance that can be helpful to investors as they're getting started is the high quality blue carbon principles and guidance, which was developed by a coalition of leaders in the space, Conservation International included, as well as the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance, TNC, and the World Economic Forum Friends of Ocean Action. And it was developed through a collaborative process with over 70 contributors helping shape that guidance. So I'll share a link to the principles and guidance a little bit later, but investors can certainly take a look at those to get a steer on what high quality can look like. And then they can also commit to sourcing projects that have meet the high quality bar or are building towards the highest quality. So that's the first for first movers. The second is supporting the enabling conditions. And Yihan also mentioned this a little bit in terms of like the importance of enabling conditions and supportive policy. So one of the things that Salesforce has done is actually also in partnership with Conservation International, some really exciting work that CI is leading in Brazil. We've supported some of that through our Nature and Sustainability Philanthropy Fund. What that work constitutes is, first, there is the development of Brazil's Pro-Manguezal Decree. And this decree establishes a national program for conservation and sustainable use of mangroves in Brazil. And it's a first step to building towards that broader policy framework. And so we're really excited about that development that came from that work with partners on the ground. And then also Conservation International is working with some partners to build out a best-in-class blue carbon project in Pará, and to show an example of what high-quality blue carbon can look like in Brazil. So those two pieces can really interact, and that's how we're using our philanthropic capital to help support that development. And so we invite other, first movers in the space to help really transform the landscape where they feel like they can really drive impact. And then the last is collaboration. And I'll speak to this a little bit later, but Salesforce is a member of what's called the Symbiosis Coalition, which is an advanced market commitment to scaling high quality nature-based solutions. And this is one of the spaces in which we're working together with others, with other buyers, as well as with the investment community and with the project developers to help really raise the bar. And blue carbon is slated to be a part of this as well. And I'll share a little bit more detail about that later. But those are the three opportunities, I think, for first movers.
Could you just very quickly give us how you define what high quality means in this context?
Yes, so you can, I'll share the link to the principles and guidance, but effectively they have the guidance points to integrity with regards to biodiversity and putting biodiversity at the center of the project, people at the center of the project, and considerations for communities and livelihoods, high quality science and the carbon calculations piece is really critical, and then also high integrity capital. And the capital piece is a critical part of this equation as well. So we have biodiversity, climate, people, carbon, and then the capital as well.
Okay, so how does Salesforce then think about blue carbon in a holistic way, connecting all the different elements, collecting resilience, biodiversity, climate impacts, and beyond just the kind of carbon credit side?
Yeah, so all of these pieces are interlinked. So when we're working in the carbon market, really, we don't want to put on our carbon blinders. And part of that is because those elements and attributes of a project, of what defines really high quality, are really critical to the durability of the project for it to persist. And I think we already heard about that from Yihan and Amy as well, in that like, if you don't have the policy pieces and the social pieces in place, then that project might not be able to then persist in the future. So all of these pieces are not just like, they're partly important because, you know, the climate crisis, biodiversity loss, and social crises are all interlinked. And we want to use this capital in the carbon market to address these interlinked crises in like a holistic way. That's really powerful, but also it's critical for the project to even be durable in the first place. So that's really what a smart investor would do as well.
Great, thank you. Quick question. Somebody's asked about the name of the coalition. It's a Symbiosis Coalition, isn't it?
Yes, and I'll drop the link.
And we'll share a link. Great, thank you very much. Okay, I know you also have a really interesting AI tool that you use to match projects and finance. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yes. So I mentioned how Salesforce, you know, part of our approach to driving change is leveraging our biggest superpowers. And one of those is our technology. And so we bring that to bear through what we call the Salesforce Accelerator Agents for Impact. And one of the grantees of that accelerator is the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance. And AURA, for short, is a global multi-stakeholder initiative that connects the finance and insurance sectors with government, NGOs, and communities to drive investment into coastal resilience. AURA aims to reduce ocean risk by mobilizing finance for nature-based solutions that protect vulnerable coastal regions while delivering social and environmental and economic benefits. And where AURA comes in to plug into this accelerator is through the Octopus platform, which is a solution that AURA is developing with 2050. And the platform matches investors to investable ocean-based projects based on the project's risk return profiles, geography, and size of investment needed. So you can kind of think of it as like the LinkedIn, right? Like there's so much swinging around in terms of the projects that are out there, the investors, and investors have all these different criteria. The projects have different stages. There really needs to be like this matchmaking solution. And that's what they're bringing forward with the Octopus platform. And as a grantee to the accelerator, AURA received flexible funding, donated Salesforce technology, and then pro bono support to help them build out the platform. And this platform is designed to catalyze funding for ocean and coastal projects so that the projects can grow faster and create bigger environmental impacts. And that was unveiled. The vision for this was unveiled. I'll drop a link for the unveiling of that this summer. And it's still in development and is slated to be, coming online in the next year or so.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, fascinating. So more generally then, how can, in your view, the collaboration that's necessary when bringing in NGOs, investors, and everyone else, how can they collaborate effectively to maximize all the benefits you've been talking about?
Yes. So in some ways, like I've been working in this space for a long time and I've been thinking like, we almost need like this, the circus director, someone to kind of tell everyone when to come on stage and like who to work with and who you're on scene with. But I've really found a lot of value, I can say, in the Symbiosis Coalition that I mentioned earlier. The Symbiosis Coalition, like I said, it's an advanced market commitment for nature-based solutions. It was launched by Google, Meta, Microsoft, Salesforce as some of the founding partners. And what it endeavors to do is to simplify access to the market by offering a shared due diligence process for multiple buyers, which increases efficiency for the project developers as well as for the purchasers. And what I really love about what Symbiosis is doing is they're also really dedicated to promoting transparency. So they are establishing a unified quality criteria backed by a technical advisory board and vetted by that, and also publishing their offtake guidance. So a lot of transparency is really built into the whole fabric of Symbiosis. And then they're also working to attract more capital by educating and engaging investors throughout the whole process, and working to expand the pipeline of projects by offering a database to early stage projects for new resources or other additional partners. As I mentioned, Symbiosis intends to, they already ran one RFP and they're wrapping up this first RFP on forestry and agroforestry this year. And the slated, intended next RFP would be for mangroves. So I have a couple calls to action then for folks on the call. For corporate buyers, of course, we invite you to join the coalition and you can signal demand together with these other companies. But you can also align on unified quality criteria and work to de-risk the nature-based carbon investments. For investors, we invite you to partner with the coalition to gain access to quality vetted pipeline. And then for project developers, we invite you to submit your early stage projects to the coalition database and to signal interest so that you can learn about future RFPs. And so there's a page, there's a form on the web page where you can register interest. Both investors can do this and project developers can register interest so they can stay up to date.
Great, thanks, Whitney. As I said, we'll share links to the things that Whitney's been mentioning. We'll share them in the chat. We'll also share them post webinar as well. Ladama, welcome. Thank you very much for your patience. Tell us a bit about your work with coastal communities, please.
Thanks a lot, Ian, and just great to be part of such a critical discussion. My work with coastal communities is informed by a transformational experience I went through working in the Kuruwitu community, one of Kenya's first locally managed marine areas, 30 hectares of sanctuary where life flourished. It's an amazing place to go snorkeling if you ever get the chance. But outside the sanctuary, it was a different story, a story of marine decline. And that's when I realized if conservation is not owned by communities, it cannot last. You can restore today, but without local stewardship, tomorrow it may all be lost. And this has gone on to be the foundation of our work, an example being in Kuruwitu, working with Oceans Alive to bring together government, community stakeholders, NGOs, even private stakeholders to chart a path to see the community gain stewardship rights and marine tenure through establishment of a 12,000 hectare co-management area, one of the first of its kind in the country. And on top of this secure, legally backed foundation, we're carrying out coral restoration, turtle protection, establishment of zones with gear restrictions, and also ecologically sensitive areas for further monitoring, control, and surveillance. And another example is through supporting the Kilifi Beach Management Unit Network in Kenya to also go through this foundational legal process to strengthen their stewardship rights. They now have a coordinated governance body, bylaws, plans, and enforcement measures to implement the protection of 265 kilometers of coastline, which also includes a number of good mangrove forests. And globally, through the LIFT network, Local and Indigenous Food System Transformation Network, we support the development of solution labs, which are these spaces where communities can ideate, develop, pilot, and implement solutions which are tailored to the context, and currently have solution labs in Fiji, Nigeria, Canada, Brazil, and Kenya. But at the core, it's about ensuring communities are not just beneficiaries, but the leaders of ocean protection.
Okay, can you give us some examples then of the sort of detail of the sorts of aspects that have to be in place for communities to get that real stewardship and decision-making power on these areas that they where they live?
Yeah, very much so. So with communities being at the heart of ocean stewardship, because they're the ones who live closest to these ecosystems, they depend on them daily, and they've safeguarded them for generations. Going through this process, it can be easier said than done. It requires the right regulations, the willingness of the communities to step into this role, and adequate collaboration and resourcing. In driving and working towards securing co-management in Kuruwitu, we were able to package our learnings into a practical 6-step process. And this guides communities, governments, and partners through decision-making, accountability, and benefit sharing. So the first step was a legally constituted group. The law requires communities to organize into a recognized entity, usually a community-based organization, and this gives them the legal standing, the ability to be recognized by the state, to enter agreements, to sue, and be sued. The second step is a defined boundary. Once you have a group, you need to know what area you're talking about. Where does your authority end? Where does the authority begin? So establishing the boundaries and understanding the area the community are mandated to work enables the development of a targeted spatial plan. The third step was a resource assessment. To manage, you must first know what's there. For informed science-based management decisions and, really having informed decisions, you need to study and understand the resources under your jurisdiction. The fourth step was developing a co-management area plan. So based on the resource assessments, the community-based organization can develop a clearly described plan of action together with other stakeholders outlining their vision for management, intent, and the approach to manage the area within their jurisdiction. And the fifth step is establishing bylaws. Within the legal framework of the sector law, such as a Fisheries Act and regulations, the community-based organization can make legal provisions on how it will implement the law for protection of its resources, its rights, and a planned monitoring, control, and surveillance activities. And the final and quite an important step is ensuring security of tenure. To ensure security of tenure and have these irrevocable rights accorded to the community-based organization, they need to be allocated by the state and outlined in the governing legislation by gazettement. And this ensures the security and protection of not only the resources in there, but it ensures that the work that you do today to protect the area isn't gone tomorrow. But laws alone don't create stewardship. Communities must be supported to step into these roles with confidence and their knowledge respected.
So obviously, a multi-stakeholder approach is what's required. What are the challenges that you face bringing together the government agencies, communities, NGOs, and investors on these ocean conservation initiatives?
Yeah, collaboration is the only way forward, but it's rarely easy. The first challenge is trust. Communities may doubt government promises. Investors may doubt local capacity. The second is time. Different stakeholders operate at a different pace, and this can bring about pressure. And from this pressure, it can increase tensions. So it's very important to move at the speed of trust and progress. The third challenge is translation. When you bring together different stakeholders, they all have their languages they speak in their field. And, when it comes to charting a way forward together, stakeholders could get lost in some jargon, some concepts or some theories around and how they're worded. And the shared understanding of the collective goal is lost. And that really is a challenge for collaboration when you're not speaking the same speak. Another barrier is data. Many local projects lack the monitoring frameworks that investors require, making it harder to unlock that finance at scale. And that really is an issue which we see in a number of the communities we work with. The potential is there, but being able to get this data, being able to set up these frameworks and some of these systems is a bit of a challenge.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Conscious of time, we've got about 20 minutes left and we've got loads of questions. But thanks very much indeed, Nama, for taking us through your views on these matters. So let me turn to those our questions. First one I want to put perhaps to you, Yihan. Our questioner says, major critique of terrestrial carbon offsets is that it takes a long time to start actually removing carbon on a large scale. What's the situation for blue carbon projects? Do they face the same challenge? Yihan.
Yes, for sure. So blue carbon is different from terrestrial forests because it's even harder and more expensive to measure and account carbon sequestration. And that's why there is not a lot of blue carbon projects that secure large-scale financing. And also, as other types of projects, AR projects, it takes 5 to 7 years for carbon credits to be issued. So these early years, the first 5 to 7 years, there's no revenue coming in. So it's critical for, concessional capital to fill the gap to support the upfront costs of developing these projects, including feasibility studies, nurseries, seedlings, community engagement, and then the whole development costs is very expensive, and we really need to use concessional capital to reduce the costs. So therefore, the private sectors could invest later on when the credits are issued to ensure a long-term success and stable revenue of those kind of projects.
Thanks, Yihan. Amy, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I just wanted to add some of my perspective as well. And I agree with everything that Yihan was saying for blue carbon restoration projects, especially for a lot of the restoration activities that might be needed to restore hydrology. These can be even more expensive to really get a restoration project started than we see for terrestrial restoration projects. One model that we have been looking into at CI is combining restoration projects with conservation projects. And so avoiding emissions or conserving an area of mangroves, for example, will start creating avoided emissions or credits that can be issued sooner or faster than a restoration activity, which may take, as Yihan was saying, a number of years before you really have a large volume of credits. Additionally, having kind of both co-located can also provide a lot of benefits, both for the restored area as well as the kind of protected or conserved area.
Okay, thank you very much. Question, I think back to this one for Whitney and Ladama. Question, and there's a theme in a number of questions, just talking about the conflict between different interests in just different jurisdictions, and how do you ensure that there's a kind of cut through where you've got these conflicts of interest in areas, particularly around ownership? I think the question is trying to get to. So Ladama, how do you go about resolving conflict when it occurs?
Yeah, so I think it starts with the collaborative space and how it's designed from the get-go. And when it comes to navigating conflict, I like to use systemcraft. Systemcraft considers these are two different stakeholders who may have two different perspectives, but we're still dealing with the same area. And I think very much number one is ensuring that how have you organized for collaboration? Number two, how is the information flowing? Very much information being accessible to all those who you're moving on this journey with, and ensuring that all voices feel valued. Next thing is, how is the direction? How's the direction being set? The clear goals transform conservation from a burden into a shared mission. So it's really about getting into this shared mission and very much making it matter. So being able to frame it in a way that matters to the different stakeholders. And when people see the tangible benefits in this shared journey, protection becomes personal. Next is the incentives. Have we been able to align the incentives from the different stakeholders that are there? Ultimately, behavior shifts when incentives align. This can mean very much the reward system for the different stakeholders that you have there. Is it clear? Is it aligned? And can they all see the benefit in it? But very much having this systemcraft approach to it helps a lot in creating spaces of trust to be able to move forward.
Thank you. Whitney, is there anything you want to add, perhaps from the basis of the coalition you mentioned? I mean, how is conflict dealt with within that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Ladama answered the question beautifully. And I think the only thing that I would add is, as I was reflecting on the question and also in your response, Ladama, I think what is behind that is just the importance of recognizing as we're looking at these projects and getting to know projects from, especially from afar, from from around the globe, the stakeholders from around the globe and investors from around the globe. Is remembering that the community is not monolithic, that the community can be like truly a patchwork of differentiated groups of people who have different interests in mind. And we also need to remember that there can often be marginalized components of the overall kind of tapestry of the community. And so when we're working with our partners and getting to know a project, one of the things I look for is to just really understand, who might be marginalized in the design of this project, and have they been integrated, or do they have a seat at the table? And that sometimes that can be youth, or it could be women, or it could be indigenous groups. But we just need to remember that oftentimes the different parties who are all local, as well as those parties that are who are engaging globally, can be quite differentiated and not monolithic.
Great, thanks very much. And thank you to all our questioners. They're coming in, they're still coming in thick and fast. Remember, you can like a question. If you see a question you want answered, like it, and it's more likely that we'll get to it in the next 15 minutes or so. Okay, our next question, moving on in a similar vein to what we just discussed, talking about making sure that equitable benefit sharing. I wonder if, again, Ladama, if you could talk about that. How do you ensure that there's equitable benefit sharing in these projects?
Thanks a lot for that question, Ian. It once again starts from how is the collaborative space designed? And from the get-go, in organizing this space for collaboration, acknowledging the different stakeholders that are there, what are their challenges, what are their needs, and what do they have to gain from this shared vision, and having that very clear. Next is, when developing a plan of action, ensuring that these voices contribute to this plan, and very much as well accountability comes into place here. So having a steering body with representatives from the different stakeholders, and to be able to drive it forward, but also it means that they are represented in the decisions that are made, but in how the vision is guided as well. And also being able to, I think it comes down to also setting systems that you put in place on accountability and transparency. So having these moments to be able to come back and report back to the community on how things are being used, how things are being developed, so that you're able to go along the way. And also on the benefit sharing aspect as well, being able to look at what do these benefits look like for these different people, which is very important, and these and very much being able to have that considered. And yeah, so I think those are some of the points.
Okay, thanks very much. Land tenure, something that we have talked a bit about. Our questioner asks how this is best managed when carbon standards require land title to issue credits, and often lands might be titleless or have other traditional methods of land tenure. Yihan, I wonder if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. That's definitely a very, very, very important question, and then adds a lot of complexity in developing carbon projects in developing countries. So for our projects, we really focus on helping communities and landowners to get legal title and land rights. So for example, the Ghana project, we are signing lease agreements with the land owned by 3 families, and they didn't have like the legal documents. So we are really pushing the governments and work closely with the governments to make sure we accelerate that process to get families, the landowners, legal land title. And in Cameroon, another project we have, the local land system is a customary system, meaning like there's no really established policy and regulations to protect land rights. So what we do is we work with the government to publish policy and develop policies that really works for protecting the land rights of local communities and indigenous communities. So that's one of the a revolutionary component of our projects is to accelerate and enforce land rights, especially for vulnerable communities. And that ties back into the benefit sharing, like LaDana just touched on. So benefit sharing go way beyond sharing the revenue generated from sale of carbon credits. It's about community rights, indigenous people's voice, and decision making. And then even just equitable benefit sharing has so many nuances. So, in our design of our projects, we consider direct cash distribution and as well as a establishment of a community trust fund that can invest in infrastructure building, not just providing individual cash distribution. We consider the equitable benefits sharing as communities have decision making in how they want to use the money. And we provide skills training, alternative livelihoods development, capacity building. These are all part of equitable benefits sharing, and the land rights is definitely one of the most critical component of community engagement as well.
Amy, do you want to come in on that issue, land title?
Yeah, I think it is one of the challenges that we've seen, and I think Yihan gave a great answer to this. It's very closely aligned to how we approach it as well. Needing kind of close coordination with the government if they kind of own or control the areas, but also working with local communities who may not have formal land titles or land tenure, but may have traditional use of the area. And in a lot of cases, especially with aquaculture, we also see that like the owner of a concession or an aquaculture pond may not be the actual farmer who's, practicing there. And so there are just many people that kind of all need to be involved in order to ensure that you can meet the requirements of the carbon standard, and also that anyone who might have a legal or other kind of claim or use of the area is included in the project.
Thank you. LaDana, I see you want to come in. Be very brief, because I do want to get to other questions, but LaDana, please.
Yes, just one of the key components when it comes to benefit sharing is that the groups receiving the benefit sharing are prepared to receive it, because there's situations where the benefits come in, and because there is no shared vision of how to use it, there's no structures for accountability or reporting, or even, let's say, an account to receive it or a body to be able to take it forward. It creates even more tensions, more issues, and now you're 2 steps back. So it's also very much ensuring that the groups have the structure and are prepared to receive those benefits and know how they collectively want to use them. Otherwise, it can be as much of a curse.
Thanks very much indeed. Our most liked question now is actually looking at other forms of blue carbon, and the question references seaweed and algae. And do our panel know any such projects selling carbon offsets, or will they be coming up in the future? I mean, Whitney, I wonder, should Salesforce be a ringmaster for seaweed and algae as well?
Yes, that was the word I was looking for. So our approach is to follow as the methodologies are being developed, and the methodologies are available with the standards that we're prioritizing. And the framework that we're following is the core carbon principles, which is CCP labeling is underway, and the CCP effectively labeling of these methodology of the standards, and then also the methodologies within is the guide. So as methodologies are developed and available with CCP label for these other ecosystems, then that's when the project's development and the investment from a company like Salesforce can follow. So far we've really been focusing on mangrove forests, but so that others can really track that, I'll drop the link to the CCP label, and so you can see like where the standards stand on in terms of eligibility.
Thanks, Whitney. Jan, do you want to come on in that? I mean, is that something that you guys are looking at?
The other types of projects?
Yeah, the seaweed algae type projects.
Yeah. We welcome all projects to apply for our accelerator program. Right now, we don't have that projects in our pipeline, but we are open to it.
Okay, great. We also have a question, a questioner coming from Nigeria. It's asking or pointing out that Nigeria has significant wetlands and asking if there are plans to develop this sort of project in Nigeria. Yihan, Amy, do you know of any projects that are going to be developed in Nigeria?
I don't know I don't think that CI has any projects in Nigerian wetlands that are currently under development. But I would say, you know, if there is a real need for restoration or kind of real threat to the standing mangrove forest there, that it could have potential. But I'm not aware, at least for Conservation International, that we're currently working there.
Yihan, anything to add?
Yeah, so I can share with everyone the guidelines for the accelerator program. We look at a set of criteria when selecting projects, mainly around, you know, the countries like carbon framework and the potential of the ecological restoration value and the carbon potential of the area. So yeah, I'm happy to share that. And if the projects meet these criteria, we are very happy to provide the capacity building, access to finance, technology to scale these projects, including projects from Nigeria.
Thank you. We're coming towards the end. I do want to address one further question, then we'll have a bit of a wrap up. So, Whitney, I wonder if you might answer this one. With a questioner talking about the challenges around climate mis or disinformation and how that's sort of impacting many areas, including these sort of projects. Whitney, is that something you've come across? Is it a challenge having to deal with the kind of misinformation that's been seems to be circulating in many circles at the moment?
So I mean, I think that the carbon market has, you know, a lot of safeguards that are being put in place in order to ensure that projects are high quality and that we're all kind of looking at and talking about the same thing when we're looking at any given project. And as I mentioned, some of those kind of guardrails are the high quality blue carbon principles and guidance sets some guardrails, as well as the CCP and then the standards and methodologies themselves that are looking at the specific projects and validating and verifying that what the projects say they're doing is what they are doing. But another mechanism that's in place in the market is the ratings agencies. And so ratings agencies are playing this role of looking at the projects independently. So this is B0 or Silvera or Calyx. They can look at those projects independently and often pull in independent data sets in order to assess and compare and validate that, you know, what the project is claiming is underway is happening and is verified, you know, from an independent source. So some of those tools can be really helpful in really understanding the status of a project, what some of the challenges are for a given project, and then also we also need to remember that many of these projects, you know, everything is also on a journey to, you know, I think sometimes I like to approach like, what is it? That you want to like assume the best intentions. You do that, and when you can work in that model, you can actually become partners towards trying to strive towards the best outcomes for people and planet. I think that's a really great orientation to take, because then it can be really constructive conversation with a project. If they, do have a weak point or an opportunity for improvement, investors or buyers can work with those projects, and either through the providing of feedback or through other dimensions of the partnership can work to improve the projects as well. So I think that's a really critical orientation to take as we're trying to navigate the facts and the figures of any given project.
Okay, thanks very much. We are coming towards the end. I do want to ask each of the panelists to give us their single thing they're going to take away from the conversation today, the single most important thing. So very briefly, Ladama, what's the key thing you're taking away from the conversation today?
We can't do this alone. This will take a collaborative effort, but in this collaborative effort, we all have to be on the same page, the same information, and understanding both the back end and the front end.
Thank you. Whitney, and you can't say collaboration.
Okay, I need another minute for this one.
All right, we'll come back to you. Amy.
I think the importance of kind of high integrity investment in projects, especially early investment and ongoing, to make sure that they can deliver high quality impacts.
Thank you. And Yihan.
I would say blue carbon goes way beyond carbon sequestration. It's about biodiversity, it's about livelihoods. So when investing in these projects, look for co-benefits and really think about your investments as contribution instead of buying the cheapest credits to offset residual emissions. It's about the people and the planet.
Thanks, Yihan. Whitney, you've had a minute.
I think now is the best time to act. I think, look at all these partners around the table. We have built some incredible building blocks and laid an amazing foundation for high quality blue carbon going forward. From the Octopus platform to the principles and guidance to these projects that have been, developing and maturing over so many years. Now is a better time than ever to really come off the sidelines and start investing, start participating, join the coalitions, get to know Symbiosis. And join us.
Thank you. That was certainly more than one thing, but thank you very much indeed. Great. My thanks to the panel. We're come to the end of our time, but thanks very much indeed to our panelists for their insights, and to you for all your questions, and also to Terraformation in particular for supporting the webinar today. You'll see there's a poll there if you want to get in touch with the Terraformation team. We'll be in touch with the webinar recordings in due course for you to share and listen to again. We'll reshare all the links. I know some in the Q&A were saying they weren't able to access the links. We'll make sure we get all of that shared as well. I hope you found the webinar useful. I've certainly enjoyed it. But for now, I've been Ian Welsh. Thanks very much indeed, and goodbye.